The problem starts to present itself when we take the amount that the borrower pays and compare that to what we estimated for the borrower. Now, some of you are already quick to the math and you're going, all right, we're going to take 150 from the borrower paid column, and we're going to compare that back to the loan estimate where we estimated $200, and we're underneath, right? We're within tolerance. In fact, we've got $50 worth of cushion, right? The answer is wrong. How much was the borrower really responsible for? Half the $200, right? Remember, we had a seller credit on there? And so what we need to be comparing is 150 back to half the 200. You have to make sure your systems are set up to do this accordingly, because where we go is we go from having a $50 cushion to having a $50 tolerance cure because we overcharged the borrower in that scenario. So this is not the method I would choose to do this. So I'm going to show you method 2. Method 2 is on page 83. Same scenario, $200 survey, third-party service required by the lender. We're picking the provider. I've got the borrower and the seller. They're splitting that $200 charge 50-50. And so the difference is going to be how I disclose it on the loan estimate. Rather than putting the full $200 charge in section B for the borrower, I'm only going to put half the $200 charge because I've got information that in good faith says they're only going to be paying half the charge. And so we put $100 there. Do I put a seller credit on the loan estimate at all? No, because the loan estimate is for the borrower, not the seller. And so I don't need to put what the seller is going to contribute relative to that fee because we're just going to collect that at the closing table. Now, the rest of the scenario is going to carry out the same as far as the increase. So let's fast forward to the closing disclosure. We're going to take the $300 fee and split it 50-50. So we got 150 to 150, right? And we're going to take that 150 and compare it back to the loan estimate, $100. And now we have our tolerance increase that's there in front and center, black and white. The system doesn't need to be manipulated to go, oh, we got to take half the 200 because it's already disclosed at half. And the $50 increase is going to show itself by way of the comparison here. So this is the, excuse me, I meant to mute that. This is the preferred method relative to these specific seller credits in that scenario. Unless you can get your system to be manipulated without a lot of work to show that previous example was off. Many can't, and so this is the method that we do that. Now, the other thing I want to do here, this is going to show up a couple different times in our 3-part series. When the seller is contributing funds toward borrower charges. Now, it happens to be a survey here, and surveys aren't finance charges. But if the seller is contributing funds towards something that is a finance charge, it doesn't make the fee not a finance charge. Okay? We've seen a lot of banks make errors by taking seller credits and knocking out borrower charges that are finance charges. It sounds like a great idea, right? We'll take what the borrower is contributing, we'll attribute it only to finance charges, and that'll make the APR come down and make our transaction look a lot better to the customer, right? I get what you're thinking, but Truth in Lending says that's not the way it works. When the seller contributes funds to the borrower's costs, those costs that are otherwise finance charges remain finance charges, even though the seller's contributing the funds to the borrower to pay them. Think about it this way. When the seller gives the borrower the money, it's the borrower's money that the borrower is using to pay their fees that are still finance charges. So make sure you're not reducing APRs and finance charges by funds contributed to the transaction by way of the seller. The only way that can ever happen is if there's a 3-party agreement between the bank, the borrower, and the seller that transfers liability from that charge from the borrower to the seller by way of that 3-way agreement. And you, the bank, have to be part of the agreement. It can't just be the purchase agreement because that's just a 2-party agreement between the borrower and the seller. Bank has to be party, and it has to shift liability from the borrower to the seller, or to the seller, and that liability from the seller then is to the bank to pay for that charge. Otherwise, all those fees remain APR charges and finance charges.